Hello, friends and beautiful people. It is Kathryn, Marcel, Elevated Consciousness Coach and 5D Visionary, here on Support Sunday in our group, Global Acceleration of Ascension. I wanted to join you here live, bring some information to you guys here today because it's been on my mind quite a bit with my business. It's been a conversation I've been having with my husband. It's been a conversation I've been having with some of my private clients, actually all of my private clients, about what's next, what's on the radar, how we can view what's next with a fresh lens, kind of like wipe away all the gunk and the debris on the lens that we've used to view everything that is behind us. And, you know, a lot of us are going through major life review, and we are configuring our lives through information of what has been. And that's just not sufficient enough for the reframe that we're being called to action to implement going forward. We can't use the same container and framework or even scaffolding that we've used before to create our lives based on the memory of who we've been even. We can't create from that perspective anymore because the frequency has shifted. The vibration has shifted. So it's like trying to fit, you know, a square peg into a round hole, or is it a round peg into a square hole? I forget. But it's really not going to work the same. It's going to be really, really unsatisfying and frustrating. Hey, Crystal, if you're going to try to build something new based on the same scaffolding, the same foundation, the same framework of what has been. And I want to talk about some real world, real tangible, applicable, real world applications of what's unfolding. So I don't know if any of you here follow Jesse Elder. I follow him here and there, not religiously, but every once in a while I will tune into one of his lives or a post or get an email from him, and it just kind of hits me square in the feels. And it was just a little post that he put on Facebook yesterday that solidified everything that I was thinking, and he put it very succinctly into very refined terms. And all it said was, for all my woo friends, things are about to get really 3D. And I laughed because, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of the term woo, but I know who he's talking to. A lot of people know who is being addressed when we talk about the woo people out there. But at the same time, the phrase, things are about to get really 3D, that hit me in the feels because that's exactly what I've been feeling. And this is, you know, before, here we are in the US, and this is before all the election divisiveness happened. I mean, I've been looking through this lens since late August at this point now, and thinking about what 2021 has in store for us and what it's going to mean for us to pick up the pieces, because we are in essence picking up a lot of pieces, and a lot of those pieces are going to stay right where they are because they're not going to fit in the bigger picture of the puzzle that we're creating going forward. They're just not going to fit anymore. And many of you are already starting to realize that. So we are picking up some pieces because there are some things that did work that are going to be refined in order so that they can be more useful to us going forward in 2021 and beyond. But the things that are going to be the most profound in terms of how things are going to shake out in the future are how we are living our everyday realities, how we are communicating with each other. Right now, we suck at it. I'm sorry. I'm just going to call it what it is. Right now, we suck at it, especially here in the US, where there is so much division. And people are mistakenly thinking it's just about politics. It's so much more about than just being about politics and choosing a side or choosing a candidate. It's really about morality, integrity, character, and intention. And some people are on one side of that, and some people on the other side of it. So it's not just about a political candidate. It's not just about choosing someone who doesn't even know at the end of the day who the fuck you are. It is not about that. You know, we're standing behind certain people because they represent some things to us. And some of those things represent real values that are going to take this world in one direction in a positive way. And some of those represent values, and I'm using that term loosely, to take the world in a different direction, okay? All these candidates serve to do here in the US with this presidential election is kind of shine a spotlight on what those values are or what they aren't. But the divisiveness is reaching this climax so that we can see the contrast of it. And we can see the damage that it does. We can see the collateral damage that lies in its wake when we all operate from this level of communication and interaction with each other. We can see that. And sometimes things, before they collapse, especially before a timeline collapses and dies out and gets used up and worn out, it has to reach that crescendo. And we are rapidly accelerating at warp speed towards that crescendo, meaning we're not really done with it yet, because we have to see the full and complete contrast of it and the polarization of it before it can die out. And I'm not here to bring you, you know, light and unicorn and rainbows and blow sunshine up your ass. That's not what I'm here to do today. I'm here to give you some real world applications or insight as to what we can expect going forward. And I'm not going to, you know, put any kind of Pollyanna veil over any of what's happening. We are in this very 3D way of putting these pieces back together. We're going to see certain things. The foundation of what makes us feel safe and secure and stable in this world, one of those things being our professional lives, what, you know, we have called a job, a career, a livelihood. It's all getting shaken up. It's all going to be shook up. I don't care what facet of business, whether you are an entrepreneur and you're a self-made man or woman, or you work for someone else, or you work for a corporate entity, or you work for a small business. Everyone is going to go through a foundational shakeup at the very core of what they do for their livelihood. Okay, it's already happening. We're already seeing it. We have not yet seen the worst fallout from the COVID pandemic and all the collateral damage that has caused in the world of financial independence or even financial codependence. We haven't seen the full shakeout of that yet. This is not meant to scare you. This is not meant to stoke fear. But this is meant to get you to start thinking about that livelihood that you've created before for yourself, whether it was a career, getting a college education, all of those things are being shook down to their very core. And the reason this is important for us to think about is because if you can no longer rely on the foundational stability or security of those ways that we've created our livelihood, our careers, our jobs, our financial security before, if that's all being shaken up at every facet of it and every level of the spectrum of that, what that's doing, the gift and the garbage, as I like to say oftentimes, the gift and the garbage from that is us being able to think outside of the box. Is us being called to action to start thinking about, okay, all of those ways, or maybe that one way I've thought for so long my life could be if I just pursued this one thing. If I took that leap of faith and finally went in, you know, head first, feet first, however you take a dive, into something where you feel like there's going to be risk, but you know at the end of the day, or you have this deep-seated feeling that it's not only going to provide some livelihood, some financial stability or security for you down the road, maybe for you and your family, but it's also going to be something that fills your soul. Now's the time to really start thinking outside of the box and thinking about What would that look like? How do I begin to take some steps towards that? What is my specific call to action right now that is within my means to take by the horns and start doing something about it? Resist the urge to think that you have to know all the hows and the parameters of how that's going to come to pass. Resist the urge to believe that all these pieces have to come into play and into integration before you can do XYZ, whatever that is. Because at a certain point, it stops being a reason and starts being an excuse. Okay? Sorry, not sorry. If this is too much for you guys, you're welcome to tune out. But for those of you who need like some hard talk here and some tough love, that's what this call is for. This is to give you guys that push, okay? Because if you feel energetically aligned with this call and sticking around for the rest of this message, there's a reason why. Because you're already thinking about what I'm talking about. It's already been on your radar. It's already rattling around in the back of your mind somewhere. Maybe it's not front of mind, but this thing that's always just kind of this shadowy little belief, this glimmer of hope that kind of lurks around in your consciousness somewhere. That if only this could happen, then I could have this. If only this thing would come into play, then I could start doing this. If there's anybody out there in Facebook land hearing what I'm saying and it resonates, please give me a heart or some sort of response. And this can even mean, those of you who are already doing your own thing. Maybe you're in a healing business, but maybe your healing business needs healing. And maybe you're ready for the next phase or the next integration of what your healing business, your spiritual-based business is all about. Ask anyone, and if you are thinking about, taking up the reins with something that you're going to venture out on your own, you're going to start something for yourself that maybe feels really big right now, but that's just because you haven't done it yet, because you haven't established a new normal with it yet. So relax into the idea that if you couldn't create it somewhere in your mind, if you were not able to do that, then it just wouldn't be. And you'd never have to worry about it. But the fact that you are a creator being and that you are brimming over with imagination and creativity, maybe you don't know all the know-how, maybe you don't know all the details, maybe you don't know all the parameters of it. That's okay. Don't get caught up in all the details just yet. Your call to action right now, and right at this precipice, this jumping off point before we leap into 2021, your call to action right now is to revel in this space. And here in the Northern Hemisphere, we are in wintertime. And it really came in with a vengeance here because it started snowing in Tahoe here today. But we are coming into the veil. We are coming into the dark months of late fall and winter. This is a time for drawing inward. This is a time for being retrospective. Okay, this is a time for going deep within and excavating and investigating what's rolling around in there in the shadows, the good and the bad. But there's just the same amount of good stuff that can be lurking in the shadows sometimes. And like I mentioned, it can be glimmers of hope. It can be an idea, some shadowy veil of inspiration that you had about something that felt like an epiphany once, an aha moment, and you're like, oh, maybe for somebody else, but not for me. What I'm asking you to do here is pull that stuff out. Pull it out. Pull it out of the shadows. Shed some light on it. Write it down on a piece of paper. Get it out of the fourth dimension of your mental matter and put it in a second dimensional visual realm by writing it down. Because anytime that we go through a dimensional shift, and yes, that is a dimensional shift, when you are taking something out of the idea state, out of the thought matter of the fourth dimensional realm, because that exists in the fourth dimension, the astral plane, Anytime you take something out of that place, that dimensional reality, and write it down, pen and paper, you are going through a dimensional shift. You are taking something out of the fourth dimension and putting it into the second dimension. At any time you go through a dimensional shift, it is an upheaval of everything that felt static or stationary or stagnant, everything that wasn't experiencing flow. It's like lighting a pilot light that has gone out for maybe a long time and igniting the fire under something, the fire of creativity, the fire of inspiration, the fire of will, the fire of, passionate purpose. That's what happens when you undergo a dimensional shift. It could be from you moving into the third dimension to fifth dimension, but it could also be from taking something from the fourth dimension and bringing it into the second dimension. Just because you're bringing it into a lower dimension doesn't mean you're not going through a dimensional shift and reaping all the benefits that happen with that. And so when you do that, you ignite a fire or a little shimmering pilot light that was there and just barely lit gets stoked with the bellows of your imagination. And before you know it, you could have a bonfire and start reaping all the rewards of a cascade of one thought that leads to another thought, that leads to another thought, that leads to another idea, that leads to some inspiration, that leads to inspired action. And all it takes is a little shift in perspective. All it takes is maybe some fresh insight or a new take on maybe what's already been, but really can't be anymore. And as we are ushering in this next year, and we move beyond the veil of late fall and winter of 2020, that's exactly what we're doing. We're being called to discard and abandon the structures, the paradigms, the confines of certain ways we've created our reality up until now. And this is good. It may feel scary at first because we are abandoning what was familiar. We are letting go of, some of the comfort and the security blanket of what has been known to us for so long. But I got to tell you, folks, what has been known to us for so long, it's all fading. It's all dissolving. And us as creator beings have the responsibility now of creating the new structures, the new paradigms, the new filters of our reality, the new mechanisms of consciousness that are going to hold the collective of consciousness in place. And it always and ever starts on an individual level. So for those of you here that are watching, what are some of the levels of inspiration that have been coming in for you? Because I know this conversation isn't just nebulous and out there and conceptual. Because I wouldn't have been called to be here today to bring this information forth and share this with you and start, yes, a conversation with you and a discussion with you about this, if I didn't feel into the collective of this group and know that there are many of you in here asking for that next level, or asking to opt out of what has been, or those of you who are looking at the means by which you've created your livelihood up until this point, and there's no security in it anymore. Especially those of you who work for bigger corporate entities, those whose bottom line is how much they care about the almighty dollar that comes in. Please don't be under the illusion that corporate entities care about you as a person. I wish that wasn't such a divisive and reductive statement, but it really is. And you're going to see this shake out more and more and more, because what's existed as corporations, they're going to get the biggest wake-up call and the biggest shakedown down to their foundational core. And the collateral damage that's going to be felt is by all of those who work for those corporations. So why not get ahead of the game by starting to reframe, okay, if I didn't have to just work for the money, And some of you, I know, have jobs where you're just doing it to make the money that you need to do to get by. And especially in the wake of the collateral damage of COVID, many of us find ourselves in that position. But I'm begging you to get beyond this survival mode consciousness of, but I just have to make this money to pay my bills. But I just have to make this money to make sure my family gets what they need. I just have to make this money because X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. I'm not trying to diminish anyone's experience for those of you who are suffering financially right now. What I am trying to do is to get you to stop thinking that that is the end all be all of your livelihood, is to just make money. There are ways to do that where you are getting something soul fulfilling out of it at the same time. But it always and ever requires this common denominator. You must be willing to be brave and take a risk and think outside of the box. At this time on this planet, when we are doing something unfamiliar, we are all taking a risk. And many of us on this planet right now are doing something unfamiliar. Many of us are taking risks. Some of those risks are working out. Some of them aren't. But we're being called up into a new level of bravery. We are being called up into a new level of courage. We're being called up into a new level of confidence where we can feel like if we take those first few steps, that net we're looking for is going to show up. But I'm going to give you some of the key things that you want to think about, and you may want to write some of this stuff down. Why am I qualified to talk about this? Because I did it. Back when I gave up my bartending job, which was hospitality was my bread and butter for so many years, even when I started my brick and mortar business. You know, maybe many of you don't know that I had a couple different brick and mortar businesses before I went fully online. I had a lot of different lives. Different lives in hospitality where I worked for other people, but I had different lives as an entrepreneur. I was an esthetician, fully licensed operating esthetician, where I had my own brick and mortar business in San Francisco. And so I did that for a little while. And then I did Reiki. And while I was doing that and bartending at the same time, I was also studying to be a hypnotherapist. And then when I completed that education, I opened up another business where I was a hypnotherapist and also a Reiki practitioner. And I did that for a little while with a brick and mortar business. All the time, all the while, I was still bartending. I still, felt like I couldn't fully take that leap and have that safety net. And then I, in the back of my mind always was thinking about, okay, well, how can I was always asking how? Instead of reframing it and being like, well, you know what? If I do this in full confidence, I just know this is going to show up. I know this has to show up because my heart is in it. And there were a couple different tweaks that I had to make mentally and emotionally, spiritually, before I could fully take that leap and leave that safety net of working in hospitality behind. And I'll tell you what they are. But it took that tweaking, that level of, okay, here's what I have to do to really make this work. I have to stop thinking about just the money that I'm going to make when I let everything else go as a means of support, meaning I knew that I've never been good at working for anybody else. Just to clarify, I am full-blown Capricorn. I got to do things my own way. I do not respond well to authority. I never have. I've been fired from many jobs because of that. I don't like the way other people do things. So I'm a natural born entrepreneur, but it took me so long to fully embrace that fact and to believe that I could do it on my own. But I realized something really important, and the biggest piece of this puzzle for me, taking that full leap of faith and doing this business full time, was this. I have to stop thinking about just the money, because it's not about just the money. It is about service at the end of the day. And it was an epiphany one day that I realized how good I was at fostering clientele, especially repeat clientele, in all the hospitality gigs that I had, and I've been everything. I have been a restaurant manager. I've been a bar manager. I've been a bartender. I was a cook. Yeah, I was a cook. So I did back of house stuff. I did front of house stuff. I was a waitress. I mean, I did all of it. I was a hostess. And the common denominator in all of that was I was very good at fostering repeat clientele and making sure that, you know, those people who were my regulars, they all got taken care of. I could anticipate their needs before they even could articulate what those were. And giving them a level of service that was always above and beyond. And having a level of integrity with that. And I said to myself, I am really good at making money for other people, meaning my employers, using these talents that are mine. They're mine. They're my gifts. I own them. I own these talents, these abilities, and these skills. For if you want to gloss it over and call it customer service, fine. I was very good at relating to people. I've always been very good at being a diplomat, which is an incredibly powerful talent when you are in customer service and dealing with the general population. Those are my gifts, my talents, mine. And I was farming them out to someone else so that they could make money off of my talents. So if someone could make money off of my talents, why can't I make money off of my talents? And it hit me like a brick in the head. And I realized that that was the key. That whatever I was going to do, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter, you know, starting my own, if I wanted to start my own restaurant, or if I wanted to have another brick and mortar business, or if I wanted to take my business completely online, whether I wanted to do DNA activation or restructuring, whether I wanted to do timeline healing. The actual business at the end of the day is incidental. The key to have in place for anything and the thing to anchor into every day, all the time, was that I am really good at fostering relationships, creating a level of trust. And if I could do that every day and have that commitment to service, to really believing in my heart of hearts that I was here to not only elevate my own station in life, but at the same time, concurrently, create a situation where someone else could elevate their station in life too, then I would have it made. And the business itself, what I was doing to make that money, would be incidental. It didn't matter what I was going to do. I could be selling encyclopedias. It wouldn't fucking matter if I could have those things in place. And I owned my talents and gifts and my skills and my abilities that I had been previously farming out for years and years and years, decades in fact, to someone else so that they could make money off of me. Because essentially, as an employer, you have employees that have skills and abilities and talents that foster business for you. You're making money off of that employee based on their productivity. And I have always been an incredibly productive employee. No matter what I was doing, cooking, managing, hosting, bartending, didn't matter. I also worked in a cosmetic company once too. So think about that. Think about the skills, the abilities, the gifts, and the talents that you've been farming out to someone else for a very long time. Maybe it's one employer, maybe it's several employers. Maybe you've had several different career changes and you've worn many hats, as I have. How many skills and talents did you accumulate on the way by moving and shifting through those different career paths? Have you taken the time to not do a life review, but a career review of all those skills, abilities, talents, and gifts that you've cultivated? That's worth something. And I'll tell you what, from my own experience, it's worth a hell of a lot more than you think it is. And when you can take those skills and gifts, abilities, and talents and turn that into a greater level of service to others, because those of you who are saying, I want 5D and I want it now, it's unity consciousness, people. It ain't about you, it is about us. So unless you're adopting the sensibility in real, everyday activities of moving towards unity consciousness, we're not going to anchor this tipping point of mass consciousness on the planet towards unity Christed consciousness. It starts with what you're doing every day. And what I'm inviting you to do is view it through the lens of, how can I shift my livelihood so that, let's face it, these companies that are folding up by the day, I'm not talking about just mom and pop companies. We haven't seen the full financial fallout of COVID yet. It's coming, and it's going to come in waves. And this is not meant to stoke fear. This is meant to put a fire under your ass so that you can start seeing, like, okay, these are the things that I can do right now. This is the mental shift I need to make right now. This is a conversation I need to start having with my family, with my husband, my wife, right now. The companies that we've worked for, the corporations that we've funded with our energy, helping them to work through our hard work, our ingenuity. They're not only not going to be the same companies, but many of them aren't going to be around for that much longer. And we've been, coming out of this, 50s mentality, this work mentality for a long time, that, we're done with the military, we get out of college, and then we go to work for someone else. We have this degree, and then we work for someone else. That's all changing too, folks. That's all changing too. The ways we've had indoctrinated into our way of being about, how we go through life, the stepped stages of becoming an adult and being a responsible person, those aren't the same foundational structures anymore. They're rapidly falling away. And so those of us who have been indoctrinated or conditioned in the feeling of safety and security and stability with those structures, you are going to be very, very disappointed, and probably sooner rather than later. If you're still holding onto those structures and thinking that's going to create some security, some livelihood for you, to create the same financial means that you've relied on for you and your family for so long. Again, this is not about fear-mongering. This is about getting you to think in a very real, tangible way about what's next and what are you going to start doing about it now. And also at the same time, getting you to own all of your gifts and talents and abilities that you have right now and that you've been farming out to someone for so long. And to be honest, probably to some employer who didn't really appreciate it very much at the end of the day. You're just a number to them. You're just another person they have to pay benefits to. Long gone are the days where we've gone to a business and, we had a real sense of presence there. We felt known. Maybe the employer talked to us by name, even in a big company, and we had a sense of pride for the company that we worked for, and we were willing to go above and beyond for that company or that corporation or whatever because we felt appreciated in a lot of ways. How many of us really feel appreciated in our work when we work for other people now at this point? Maybe there's some great businesses still around who, are doing their best to keep their employees hanging on, in the wake of COVID and all that stuff that's happening. I know that there are companies out there like that, but those are fleeting. They may not even be around that much longer. And the corporations that we think, oh, well, they're the ones that are, they're getting all the money to keep going, or they're buying out other companies and they're getting bigger and they're operating under the guise of employing more people, et cetera, et cetera. You are an expendable entity. Labor is always the most expendable entity in any business, especially a corporation. We have to stop thinking about, or we have to opt out of the thinking that there is a sense of security working for someone else. Maybe you feel like you're in a position where, it's very favorable for you and you're working for someone else because you're making the money. But let's bring it back to, okay, maybe you're making the money. Maybe you feel that security. But is it feeding your soul? Because part of moving into unity consciousness is also about just not the means of making money to spend money. That paradigm is dying. Kind of a slow death, but it's dying. Where we're just making money from one monster to feed another monster, right? That's flimsy. It kind of sucks too. It's empty. It's vapid. Think about how you want to cultivate your talents and gifts and abilities to really serve yourself, but serve humanity at the same time. Because when you step up to a level of service in whatever you do, and it doesn't matter if you do work for someone else or not, but when you step up your level of service and you're really there to commit and go above and beyond, you create an incredible ripple effect. And that is unity consciousness, really. Where you feel like you are giving so much of your natural skills, gifts, talents, and abilities because they're already there. It's not like you have to work hard to realize something that's already inherent within you. And when you're giving from a level of service where you just are already giving from that fount that is natural and inherent to your natural gifts and talents and abilities, it doesn't feel like you're giving anything. That's the key to living at the level of your higher self as well. Because if you feel like you're giving all the time and you're exhausted, that means you're giving at the level of the ego self. And unfortunately, when we work for someone else or we work for a soul-sucking entity, that's the level of perspective that we're giving from, and that's why we're so fucking exhausted and depleted all the time. And am I saying that everybody should go out and work for themselves? No. Because you can still operate within, like, having these structures in place, working for someone else. But we have to let go of the idea that there is a lifetime of security in working for that someone else. We've already seen, even before COVID, so many businesses whittle their full-time employees down to, 36 hours or less, so they wouldn't have to pay them benefits anymore, but still reap the benefits of getting basically a full-time employee, right? We've already seen that. Folks, after COVID, that's not going to get any better. In fact, it's going to get worse. And some of you out there are already feeling that. Even if you're just thinking about keeping your job but doing a side hustle, what is that side hustle? And not just for making money. How does it feed your soul? How does that feed the soul of others when you're giving at that level of yourself? Think about if you could go to work every day and be operating from the perspective of that higher self vantage point of view. What do you think your workday would feel like? You think you'd be exhausted and depleted at the end of the day? You think you'd end your day feeling like you have nothing left to give your family? When I made that shift to realizing that, number one, I'm going to use my gifts, skills, talents, and abilities for myself so I can make money from myself rather than someone else making money from me. And I was going to do it at a level of integrity that was beyond where I was operating before, and it was already pretty high, I'll be honest with you. But a level of cooperation, a level of openness, a level of trust, a level of deep, deep, deep commitment to service. And those of you who have been with me for a while and you've been on this journey with me, you know, I always will teach courses where I make it easy for you to access me, even in group programs. Some group programs are taught by people and then the host just kind of ghosts you. You're like, well, the material's out there, you're on your own with it. I don't teach that way. There are people who have had DNA activations with me 2 years ago who still reach out to me, and I will still give them guidance and help give them navigation points and help and tools. And when I teach group programs, I don't just ghost people. I leave the Facebook groups open or the support groups open, and they can tag me and ask me questions all the time. because it's in the details, giving that level of service that people feel. And here's the benchmark of people moving up into elevated stations of being. The benchmark of that is having people around you who are creating that base of support, that foundation of support, so that even if you feel like you fall down a couple layers or rungs on your ladder that you're climbing up, that there's someone there to support you. And if you feel that way, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're venturing into that's scary and unfamiliar and uncomfortable for you even, if you feel you have that layer or level of support, you tend to keep going. You tend to keep challenging yourself. And if I can be that person, if you can be that person that gives that foundation and base of support to someone else or even a large group of people, which is what I've opened myself up to do, and I realize that that is part of my destiny and my path, to open myself up in support and service to many, many people at once, wonderful things start to happen. You get to watch people go through major trajectories of change. Walk a path that when you first met them 2 years ago, you didn't even think they were going to go there. They didn't even think they were going to go there. When people are in the hospital and they're going through a healing process, and they're in a hospital where the nurses don't come around no matter how many times you ding the call button, and the doctor comes in, doesn't even look you in the eyes, looks at your chart, says a few things, and then leaves, and then ghosts you for a week. You know what happens to those people in the hospital? They get sicker. They tend to lose hope. They tend to not do so well. Some of them even die. We are here to bridge this gap in unity consciousness, and we are here to start realizing, how do we do that now in our everyday reality? And what I'm inviting you to do is to start looking at, how do you do that right now from where you're at with the livelihood that you're creating going forward? Financial livelihood, professional, career, livelihood, all of that. Start reframing what that could look like for you now. Don't wait until December 30th. Don't wait until January 4th. Start doing it now. And as you're doing this, don't just think about, I'll only make money if I do this. Start thinking about, I'll make money. I'll be filling my soul. I'll be helping to fill and expand the soul of others. And I'll do it from a deep level of commitment and integrity of service. Unity consciousness is not just some nebulous esoteric concept, folks. It's something that is meant for us to be grounding into and building the bridge to enacting now. Right now. I mean, now. With all this shifting and changing on the planet, this is the call to action. So I hope this gives you some inspiration, maybe a little tough love, but I also wanted to offer something to those of you who are in a spiritually based business, and maybe you've hit a wall creatively, or maybe you feel like, I just don't know what's next. You know, I don't know what people need. Like, I'm not abandoning my business, but I don't know what people need anymore. You know, a lot of us are going through that confusion as entrepreneurs. And even if you're not in a spiritually based business, but maybe you're thinking of creating one, or maybe you're thinking of, you know, embarking on some side hustle where that is incorporated somehow. I taught a program a little while ago, 2 years ago, called Heal, Awaken, Align Bootcamp. And it's a Facebook group. So obviously, if you're here watching, you're already on Facebook. But I wanted to just open it up because there are 12 different classes where I offer a lot of different insight on how to start shaking up your business, how to rethink or reframe your business. Even if you're not in a spiritually based business, you can still incorporate spiritual principles into the foundation of your business. You can still incorporate spiritual principles into whatever livelihood you're going to start creating next. And so this can be for a lot of different people across a massive spectrum of experience. But if you're experiencing the growing pains of the ascension process and this shift in frequency that we're all experiencing on the planet, and you need some help with a reframe, and maybe you want to upgrade your life and your business, maybe you've hit an income ceiling and you want to move beyond that, there's stuff to upgrade your wealth frequency in here. So all of the replays are in this group, and there may be some broken links here and there, and I'm not going to fix those. There's only a couple because I haven't gone in and reworked this group, but there is a ton of great information in here. There are exercises that you can do to help, get the mojo flowing. Help yourself think outside of the box. Get some clarity, get some focus, and get some support. So I'm going to open it up for $25. $25. So anybody who is interested in that, I'll give a more detailed post in the comments here about what that is. But if you want to open up some new creative pathways, allow yourself to imagine and then even actualize some greater potentials for your life, for your business, for the livelihood that you're going to be creating next, this is going to be a great resource for you to breathe some new life into your business even, or maybe even start one. Maybe you've had some ideas written down, they've been collecting dust in a cocoon on your desk in your office for a long time. This is going to help give you some fresh insight on maybe your purpose and your direction, and kind of bolster your reserves, help you rise to the occasion a little bit and maybe taking these first inspired steps of action. So I'm going to open it up for just $25. And there is, let me see how many. There are about 12 different audio class replays. And then there are a series of exercises, and I'm going to go through and actually put stuff in units to make it easier for you guys to follow. So there it is, folks. I hope this helps you. I hope that this has helped to bring in some inspiration, some new insight for you, and maybe, light a fire under your backside a little bit for some things that you've been sitting on for a while. So I'll leave the full details in here for you guys to check out. Only $25. I think when I first started it, it was $500. So, and all the replays and all the exercises there, and there's some bonus meditations and guided meditations in there as well that are going to be really helpful for you to boot. So thanks for watching, you guys. I want to wish you so much love, inspiration, and peace. Bye-bye.